cultural issues were very popular in that room. Former President Trump went on a long rant about transgender Americans, and he used transphobic language. In particular, he was talking about transgender women competing in sports and said that they were men trying to compete against women, which of course is not the right way to talk about that issue.
All right, guys, so yesterday I did a video about how woke journalist Yamiche Alcindor basically got triggered over Trump making jokes about transgender athletes competing against athletes of the opposite biological sex in sports. And she made the statement that saying that biological men, are competing against women in sports is not the way we're supposed to talk about this issue, and that it is transphobic. And my reaction to that was, well, how the hell are we supposed to talk about it then, right? If we can't simply state the facts that biological men are competing against biological women in sports, then how are we supposed to talk about this? But once I thought about it more and I ran across this story that we're going to talk about today, I think to a certain extent she's right? Maybe it is not appropriate to make jokes about the situation, because although I believe that it is totally fine to make jokes about it, maybe jokes aren't the best way to get the point across in regards to how serious this actually is. And at points in Trump's speech, he actually was being serious, okay? But it's also important to make sure we are highlighting how the ramifications of allowing biological men to compete against biological women in sports can be traumatic. For example, when you allow biological men to compete against biological women in combat sports, like MMA, for example, women literally get their heads busted open, okay? That is what happens, right? And that is not something I want to see. I don't want to see legalized domestic violence. I really don't, okay? And there are other traumatic experiences that leave women more emotionally scarred than physically scarred. Like, for example, having to share a bathroom or a locker room with a biological male, which is what we're going to talk about here today, as Miss Riley Gaines, a swimmer from Kentucky, had that experience with Lia Thomas at the NCAA National Championships in Georgia. And she has been very, very, very outspoken about how traumatic her experience was in regards to having to not only compete against Lia Thomas in the championships, right, being at a disadvantage, a physical disadvantage, but also having to share a locker room and be exposed to Lia Thomas. And she spoke out about that recently on Tucker Carlson, and I think it's important to share her story because she really is a brave soul for having the cojones to speak out about this. Take a listen.
This is one of those stories, the Lia Thomas story, that you have doubtless heard of, but the details are shocking. Riley Gaines is one of the most impressive young people we've talked to in a long time. We talked to her today for a recent episode of Tucker Carlson today, and she explained what it was like watching William Thomas compete in the women's division. Here's part of it.
People just weren't really talking about it. And so we get to NCAA's.
Where is it?
It was at Georgia Tech.
Yep.
And so we get there, and the environment is nothing like I've ever seen before. It was so almost edgy. Like people didn't really know what to say, who to say what to, how to feel. Obviously I know how I felt and I knew how my teammates felt, but no one really wanted to talk about it. And so this was on day one. And then that night we watched Lia Thomas win a national title and blow all the other females completely out of the water. And that next day we came back and the mood had shifted to where people were mad. The girls, there were tears. These poor 9th and 17th place finishers who missed out on being named an All-American. There's extreme discomfort in the locker room. There's, kind of these grumbles of...
Was he wandering around the women's locker room?
Yeah. And that's not something, we were forewarned about, which I don't think is right in any means. Changing in a locker room with someone who has different parts.
So they just set a dude loose in your locker room and didn't tell you?
Exactly. And so I feel like to have that kind of forced upon us, so not only were we, forced to race against a male, we were forced to change in the locker room with one. And so it's just this feeling of what is happening? Honestly, is this really happening? This is crazy.
Yeah, I totally understand. Well, maybe I don't because I haven't been forced in that situation, which again tells you it's a shame that the NCAA is forcing women to go through that type of traumatic experience where, again, they are being forced to see somebody's genitals of the opposite sex. But again, if you say something about it, you're a bigot, right? You are transphobic, okay? That is what they're going to label you. And you might get canceled. You might lose your ability to swim competitively at the college level. You might lose your scholarship. You might be shamed. Again, that is the society that we live in, and that is why it is so important and also brave at the same time for somebody like her to speak out about that experience, because this is how we should be talking about this, right? That's why I put that video at the beginning of this video, okay? Yeah, the right way to talk about this is not to make jokes about it, because it's not a joke when young women like Miss Riley Gaines here has to see somebody's penis, okay? It's not a joke, right? That is a traumatic experience that we should not force women to go through because we're trying to be diverse and inclusive, okay? We need to be using common sense when it comes to stuff, man. But again, we've gone so woke in our society that common sense have gone out the window because, again, wokeness is the opposite of common sense, right? That's what it is. Wokeness is the opposite of common sense, right? Because common sense would tell us that, hey, you know what? Even if we're going to allow this person to compete against biological women in sports, at the very least, don't allow this person to change, okay, and get undressed in front of biological women when they have different body parts. We shouldn't allow that, because if this person wasn't identifying as a woman, then everybody in society would say, no, this is wrong, right? We should not be subjecting women to this. But for whatever reason, if you say that you're a woman, okay, if you just say, look, I believe that I'm a woman, it's totally fine for you to go into the locker room even if you don't have women parts, right? Again, it's amazing how that works. It's almost like they're inviting people to try to take advantage of those cuckoo for Cocoa Puff rules, right? That's what it is. You're inviting people to take advantage of that stuff, which is why we shouldn't have this at all in regards to, one, biological men competing against biological women in sports, and then two, especially allowing biological men and biological women to use the same bathrooms or forcing women to use the bathroom with a man. It doesn't make sense. And if you are going to do that, right, because you want to be diverse and inclusive, at the very least, make the biological man go through the whole process, right? Make them get their twigs and berries cut off, actually transition, actually be about that life if they actually really want to be about that life, right? Because at the very least, if they actually go through the procedure, okay, when they get undressed in the locker room, it's not like you have to subject women to seeing the body parts of the opposite sex because you cut it off, right? They cut it off, right? Which again, I think is fair, right? I think the middle ground on this is that, hey, look, you know, the conservative in me says that, you know, I disagree with people who want to change their gender or their sex or whatever. However, the libertarian in me says they're an adult. I'm not really trying to ban it, okay? So, you know, when people go through sex changes, that does bring up an interesting conversation about what bathroom should they use. But we're talking about people who actually go through sex changes, right? They get their tops done, they get their bottoms done. Yeah, if you're a man and you get both of those things done and you basically look exactly like a woman, okay, which some of these transgender women do, they look exactly like real women. Yeah, if you want to use a women's bathroom, I don't really have a problem with that because essentially that is less awkward than you using a man's bathroom, right? I can't imagine somebody that looks like a woman, you know, with their top done and their bottom done going into a man's bathroom. I think that's super awkward, right? Or even vice versa. You have a somebody that looks like a man that got a full beard, okay, and that has, I don't know, grew a penis, right? I'm not necessarily sure how that works. I don't necessarily know how the transformation from a woman to a man works, right? But regardless, again, having somebody that looks like a man go into the women's bathroom, I think that's awkward as well too. So if you actually went about that life and you've transitioned, I don't have a problem with it. However, if you still swinging, right, and you decide you want to go into a woman's bathroom, again, that's totally inappropriate. That's totally inappropriate, right? And again, you should not force women, biological women, to go through that because you want to be diverse and inclusive. You don't want to hurt one person's feelings. Everybody else's feelings, right, have to be hurt. Everybody else needs to be traumatized, okay, and even subject to unfair competition, they need to lose spots, lose awards. Everybody has to bend over to the feelings of one person, right? And we can't have a society built around that. We can't have a society built around that. Lia Thomas needs to bend to everybody else, right? Because we're the majority, not the other way around. Not the other way around. So, again, kudos to Miss Riley Gaines for actually not only just speaking out, but showing her face and going on a national TV interview with Tucker Carlson and telling it like it is and telling her story, because stories like hers are stories that should be pushed to the forefront of this conversation. Women's voices should be pushed to the forefront of the conversation because they're the ones that have been affected by this the most. So, again, she's a very brave soul. Congratulations to her. I hope that she is supported in any endeavor in life that she decides to pursue, because she truly is a special person and a very brave individual for doing this. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.